In a time of turmoil and oppression, the people of Israel longed for a hero, someone chosen by God to stand against the Philistines who ruled over them with an iron hand. Into this world of hardship and hope, a child was born under miraculous circumstances. Samson, destined from birth for a divine purpose, came into the lives of a barren couple, fulfilling a promise that only faith could bring to life. From the very beginning, he was set apart as a Nazarite, a person consecrated to God, and his strength unimaginable and unmatched was symbolized by a single, sacred strand of uncut hair. This was not just the birth of a man. It was the arrival of a living instrument of God's will, a figure whose journey would challenge the mightiest of foes and inspire generations to come. Samson's story reminds us that even in the darkest times, hope can emerge in the most unexpected forms, guided by faith and purpose. As we explore the incredible life of Samson, from his miraculous birth to the extraordinary feats that would make him legendary, we invite you to join us on this journey of strength, courage, and destiny. Do not forget to hit the like button if you enjoy this story and subscribe to our channel to follow along with more epic tales from history and scripture. Each story we share is crafted to inspire and captivate, so stay tuned for a journey that will leave you amazed and inspired. Welcome to the world of Samson, the man whose life was destined to change history, reminding us that greatness often begins in the most unlikely places. From the very first days of his childhood, Samson's life was marked by signs of a power far beyond ordinary human reach, a force that seemed almost alive within him, pulsing through every movement and decision. Even as a young boy, he exhibited strength that left those around him in awe and sometimes in fear, a manifestation of God's Spirit moving through a chosen vessel. It began with an event that would be recounted for generations. A lion, fierce and untamed, crossed his path. While any ordinary man would have fled in terror, Samson confronted the beast without hesitation, feeling neither fear nor doubt. With the barest touch of his hands, the young Nazarite overpowered the lion, tearing it apart as if it were no more than a fragile reed, an act that spoke not only of raw physical power, but of divine empowerment guiding his every motion. This early encounter was only the beginning, a glimpse of what God had intended for him, and it became clear that Samson's life would be shaped by feats beyond comprehension. As he grew, so too did the magnitude of his strength. He moved through his village and the surrounding lands with a presence that inspired awe. Doors that once resisted the push of many could yield to his hands. Gates could bend, ropes could snap, and no labor seemed too heavy for him to undertake. Each display of power was not merely an exhibition of might, but a vivid reminder that God's Spirit rested upon him, an unmistakable sign that he had been set apart for a purpose larger than personal ambition or pride. The people of Israel watched in a mixture of wonder and hope, seeing in Samson a beacon during a time when their nation was pressed under Philistine domination. Tales of his deeds spread quickly. The story of the boy who had faced and defeated the lion circulating from village to village, each retelling growing more elaborate as witnesses and listeners alike tried to capture the magnitude of what they had seen. Even in moments of private reflection, Samson felt the weight of the power that surged through him, a responsibility intertwined with the gift itself. For it was clear that his abilities were not his own to command but a tool of divine will, a symbol of God's promise to deliver Israel from its oppressors. Yet, his strength was never merely a spectacle. It shaped his character, revealing both his boldness and the intensity with which he would confront challenges. It instilled in him a confidence rooted not in arrogance, but in the certainty that his life was guided by a higher purpose, that the Spirit that lent him strength also offered guidance, warning, and clarity in moments of danger and decision. Samson's extraordinary abilities became intertwined with his destiny, each triumph over the seemingly impossible forging the path that would lead him into the heart of the conflicts that defined his nation's struggle and his own legend. As the boy became a young man, these early demonstrations of strength laid the foundation for the epic challenges he would face and the extraordinary victories that would come to define his name. every lion felled, every barrier overcome, and every seemingly impossible feat accomplished carried the unmistakable signature of a life empowered by God. A life destined not for quiet existence, but for a saga that would echo through history as a testament to the remarkable force of faith, destiny, and divine empowerment embodied in a single man, as Samson moved from boyhood into the vigor of young adulthood. His life became increasingly intertwined with the people he was meant to confront and challenge, particularly the Philistines, whose oppression weighed heavily on Israel. Despite the warnings of his parents and the traditions that set him apart as a Nazarite, Samson's heart was drawn to a Philistine woman, a choice that would set in motion a series of events blending love, deception, and the raw force of his extraordinary strength. The marriage was intended as a union, but it quickly revealed the tension between personal desire and divine purpose. For the Philistines represented the very power that had enslaved and dominated his people. At the wedding feast, Samson presented a riddle to his guests, a puzzle born of his cunning mind and his recognition of the precarious balance between intimacy and enmity, a test that he hoped might bind the Philistines to him in curiosity and challenge. Yet, even this attempt at subtlety could not contain the undercurrents of treachery, and the betrayal by his own bride exposed Samson to the dangerous entanglement of trust and deceit in a world where political and personal alliances were seldom straightforward. The revelation of the riddle's answer, extracted under pressure from Samson's bride, ignited a fire within him, a mix of indignation and a sense of destiny demanding action. This first taste of betrayal sparked Samson's initial acts of vengeance, carried out with the same almost supernatural decisiveness that had defined his childhood feats, revealing how his extraordinary abilities were both a gift and an instrument of judgment. He confronted 30 Philistine men, not with hesitation but with a relentless precision that left them defeated and underscored the reality that Samson's strength was inseparable from his mission. Each act of retaliation sending a message that Israel's champion would not be ignored or undermined. Yet Samson's response extended beyond the immediate personal affront, touching on the broader struggle between his people and their oppressors, for he used fire to burn the Philistines' crops, setting foxes loose to create devastation across their fields. A calculated and symbolic act that intertwined retribution with the demonstration of strategic intelligence and the inexorable force of his will. These early conflicts with the Philistines were more than mere episodes of anger. They marked the beginning of a prolonged struggle, each encounter building upon the last, as Samson's life increasingly reflected the tension between personal desire and the larger purpose ordained for him. His actions, though rooted in immediate grievance, resonated with the echoes of divine empowerment that had first manifested in his youth, a reminder that the extraordinary strength coursing through him was inseparable from the unfolding destiny of Israel. With every step, every calculated strike, and every act of cunning, Samson's legend grew, not as a simple tale of brute force, but as a narrative in which intelligence, emotion, and divine purpose collided, shaping a man whose life was defined by both extraordinary feats and the human complexities of love, betrayal, and vengeance. Through these episodes, the young Nazarite began to understand the weight of the power he carried, the responsibilities it demanded, and the consequences it entailed. Each revenge, each calculated act against the Philistines, was a step along a path that would see Samson rise from the boy who tore a lion apart with his bare hands to a man whose choices and actions would leave an indelible mark on his nation's history, demonstrating the intricate balance between human impulse and divine mandate, between personal desire and the inexorable demands of destiny, and between the awe-inspiring strength of a man and the complex world in which he wielded. As Samson's conflict with the Philistines deepened, his life became an unrelenting sequence of battles that tested not only his extraordinary physical power, but also the wisdom and restraint that came with the Spirit of God that dwelled within him, the source of the strength symbolized by his uncut hair. Each encounter with the Philistines was more than a skirmish. It was a dramatic confrontation in which Samson's abilities transcended ordinary human limits, transforming him into a living instrument of divine justice. On one occasion, when surrounded and outnumbered, Samson seized the jawbone of a donkey, an object utterly mundane yet instantly transformed in his hands into a weapon of unparalleled destruction. And with a force that seemed impossible, he struck down 1,000 men, a feat that resonated far beyond the immediate battlefield, sending waves of fear and awe through the Philistine ranks and elevating Samson's reputation among his own people as a champion uniquely empowered to challenge their oppressors. But Samson's exploits were not confined to moments of sheer physical confrontation. They were also acts of strategic daring, each movement carrying both tactical significance and symbolic weight. In one of his most iconic demonstrations of strength, he lifted the massive gates of the city of Gaza, an imposing feat that was both literal and metaphorical, representing the breaking of barriers that had long confined and oppressed Israel. By carrying the gates to the top of a hill, he not only outmaneuvered the Philistines, who sought to contain him, but also made a statement about the reach and impact of his divine empowerment, showing that the hand of God could achieve what human strength alone could never hope to accomplish. These acts of might, while breathtaking in their intensity, were entwined with a sense of purpose. Samson's battles were not random expressions of fury but deliberate steps in the unfolding plan of Israel's deliverance, each victory a signal that the oppression of his people would not endure indefinitely. The cycle of confrontation, retreat, and resurgence defined much of Samson's life, illustrating both the human complexities of his character and the extraordinary nature of his mission. Each conflict revealed layers of courage, cunning, and times, impulsive decision-making, reminding those who witnessed him that his gifts were inseparable from the responsibility he bore, and that divine empowerment came with consequences as well as opportunity. Whether striking down 1,000 men with a simple jawbone or demonstrating unthinkable ingenuity in maneuvering through fortified cities, Samson's actions blurred the line between the natural and the supernatural, creating a narrative in which strength, faith, and destiny converged with dramatic intensity. Through these legendary deeds, Samson became more than a warrior. He became a symbol of Israel's resilience and hope, a tangible demonstration that even in the face of overwhelming oppression, a single individual, guided and strengthened by divine purpose, could alter the course of history. His life illustrated the profound interplay between human agency and divine guidance, showing that extraordinary power, when wielded with determination and in alignment with higher purpose, could serve as the catalyst for liberation. Each battle, each confrontation, and each seemingly impossible feat carried the weight of this destiny, reminding both friend and foe that Samson's path was a conduit through which God's plan for Israel would begin to unfold, leaving an indelible legacy of courage, strength, and deliverance that would echo across generations, shaping the narrative of a people yearning for freedom and a champion chosen to lead them toward it. Even the mightiest heroes are not immune to the subtleties of human desire and vulnerability. And for Samson, it was the allure of Delilah that introduced the most profound test of his life, one that would ultimately lead to his greatest humiliation and the temporary loss of the extraordinary strength that had defined him. From the very moment he became captivated by her, Samson's judgment was clouded by affection, a deep and consuming attachment that left him open to manipulation and deception, demonstrating that even the spirit-filled champion of Israel was still human, subject to emotions and desires that could steer him away from wisdom. Delilah, cunning and patient, recognized this weakness and wove a web of persuasion around him, her questions and entreaties initially gentle, almost playful, yet always aimed at uncovering the truth that Samson guarded more closely than any physical weapon, the secret of his unmatched strength, the divine empowerment that flowed through him as a result of his Nazarite vow, faithfully marked by his uncut hair. For many days, Samson resisted her coaxing, speaking in riddles and half-truths. Perhaps aware, on some level, of the catastrophic consequences should he disclose the source of his power. Yet the persistent and calculating presence of Delilah gradually eroded his resolve. His eventual confession, admitting that his strength would leave him if his hair were cut, was not merely a surrender of a secret. It was the dramatic pivot in a story that had until then celebrated his victories and miraculous feats. The moment Delilah seized her scissors, cutting each strand with deliberate intent, was both literal and symbolic, severing the physical token of his vow and the spiritual conduit that had enabled him to perform acts beyond human possibility. With the departure of the Spirit of the Lord, Samson's immense strength vanished, leaving him exposed and vulnerable in a world where enemies had long feared and respected his might. The consequences were immediate and crushing. Samson was overpowered by the Philistines, bound, and taken as a prisoner to Gaza, where the humiliation of captivity was compounded by the loss of his sight, a physical and symbolic representation of the inner blindness that had led him to trust the wrong person. Paraded before crowds and mocked as a spectacle, the once feared warrior became a cautionary emblem of vulnerability, illustrating how even those chosen for greatness can falter when human desires override prudence and faith. In these moments, Samson's story transcends the narrative of extraordinary physical feats. It becomes a meditation on the intricate interplay between power and weakness, divine purpose and human frailty, and the enduring truth that strength alone, however miraculous, cannot safeguard against deception and betrayal. Yet within this fall lies the seed of redemption. For Samson's journey was never solely defined by his failures. His capture, blinding, and degradation marked the beginning of a profound transformation, a turning inward that would ultimately reconnect him to the divine source of his strength, demonstrating that even the gravest missteps do not preclude the possibility of restoration. The tale of Samson and Delilah resonates with timeless human themes: the tension between desire and duty, the peril of misplaced trust, and the resilience required to rise again after devastation. In recounting these events, one witnesses not only the vulnerability of a man chosen by God, but also the enduring lesson that true strength is inseparable from faith, discernment, and the willingness to reconcile with one's own failings, laying the foundation for a final chapter in which Samson's legacy would reach its dramatic and awe-inspiring climax. Even in the depths of despair, Samson's story was far from over, for within the prison walls of Gaza, blinded and humbled, a quiet transformation was taking place that few could have foreseen. Deprived of his freedom, mocked and forced into servitude, he endured the weight of his failures. Yet even in this darkness, the divine plan was quietly unfolding. As the years passed, his hair, the sacred symbol of his Nazirite vow and the source of God's Spirit within him, began to grow once more, a subtle yet powerful reminder that hope and redemption can emerge even from the most devastating circumstances. Each strand represented not just physical growth, but a spiritual restoration, a reconnection with the divine power that had once made him a champion of Israel. Samson's heart, heavy with reflection on his mistakes, turned back to God, and in that turning, he discovered that his mission had not been abandoned, but only delayed, awaiting the moment when faith and courage could rise once more. The occasion came during a grand Philistine festival, a celebration of their perceived victory over Israel and over Samson himself. The temple, filled with revelry, laughter, and the sounds of triumph, became the stage for the final act of Samson's life and legacy. With hands guided by renewed faith, he prayed, asking God to grant him strength one last time, not for glory, but to fulfill the purpose for which he had been chosen. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The Spirit returned with full force, flowing through him with the same might that had defined his youth, in a display of power so extraordinary that it would be remembered for generations. Samson grasped the central pillars of the temple and, with a deep, resolute effort, brought them crashing down. The structure collapsed in a thunderous roar, killing countless Philistines, defeating enemies who had tormented him, and delivering a final, decisive blow to those who had oppressed Israel. This act, both tragic and triumphant, was the culmination of a life marked by remarkable feats, human weakness, and divine purpose. Samson's death was not a defeat but the ultimate fulfillment of his mission, a sacrifice that underscored the profound lesson that true strength is inseparable from faith, courage, and reliance on God. His story stands as a timeless testament to the power of redemption, illustrating that even after failure, betrayal, and suffering, one can rise to accomplish a destiny far greater than oneself. Thank you for joining this journey through the life of Samson, a story of extraordinary strength, human vulnerability, and divine purpose. If you enjoyed this retelling and want to explore more incredible tales from history and scripture, do not forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any future stories that inspire, teach, and captivate. Your support helps us continue to share these timeless lessons with the world, and we can't wait to bring you along on the next adventure.